One last question for you about integrations, and then I actually want to get into the specifics because you're doing a lot of cool things. XDR is a really big trend right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are you guys seeing? What are you doing around XDR when it comes to deployment? I mean, just let's talk in general with threat intelligence and the illusion that is XDR.
Yeah, so that's a really tough question. And the reason why I'm going to say that's a really tough question is because what does XDR mean to you? And that's a really
100%.
challenging thing because it means something different to everybody else. Even, we'll call them experts on XDR, don't really agree on what it is. So XDR to me means high telemetry data that is arising from endpoints, some way to be correlated, looked at, and then decisions made off of, and then some level of automation potentially, or it could be elevation to analysts to provide fast and effective remediation efforts. So extended detection and response. That does not mean that it has to specifically be one unified product, but when you look at it from what's missing from that statement of XDR is really threat intel, really that point and piece there, because you're still going to run into the challenge that, we'll call them traditional SIM, or, I always say, the SIM is dead, long live the SIM. It's the next evolution of it. That's really where that context kind of drives deeper into the endpoint and shows that value there. One of the things that we're seeing and one of the things that we're doing is trying to drive more context around endpoints. So what does that data mean? What does it provide? What does it allocate? What's present within it? And what can you do to query that endpoint when you're pivoting from somewhere else? Because cybersecurity looks at it through different lenses. Is it an endpoint lens? Is it a network lens? Is it a application lens? Is it a perimeter lens? All of these different lenses, you look through all of these different use cases through, but you may need to be able to query the endpoint to find something out because you're pivoting off of network data, or you're pivoting off of a firewall log or something that is not specifically the endpoint, and you're driving towards that high fidelity data at the end. And that's where, automations are really key, and allowing analysts to pull that data in an effective way is really crucial.
Yeah, you're spot on. And it's funny how, though, we are seeing this trend go to the endpoints where 10 years ago, I'll say it was all about, at the network, at the center, you had that,
Yep.
big firewalls, and now we're going back to the endpoints. And look at Microsoft, look at Elastic, look at Palo, IBM, right? They've all invested in endpoint technologies and are morphing into this XDR space, all very different definitions of XDR, but all something that's sitting on the endpoint.
I always come back to the old joke of the firewall is dead, long live the firewall. It was endpoint firewalls that were always the thing. Why would you ever deploy a firewall if you've got an endpoint firewall? Well, then that changed back into, hey, now we've got next generation firewalls. And so it's kind of this evolution of visibility that you're really trying to drive forward, because if you're not able to see what's happening, you're not able to calculate that, you're not able to see and determine where your blind spots are, you don't know what's right and you don't know what's wrong. And that's really if you're a practitioner, that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is I don't know what I don't know. And so how do you kind of garner that visibility without overloading your team or dumping, gigs and terabytes of data into tools that are expensive, or even making sure that your new deployments are visible to you as well? Because if you don't see where your perimeter ends or where your endpoints are, you don't know where you actually are and you don't know what's there. And that's the thing that, I think is really the ultimate goal of XDR, is really providing that visibility across all different avenues. Because if you have an endpoint that pops up in an Azure instance, you may have an Azure instance that you were unaware of. So how do you then start to ingest from that, allocate it, look at the perimeter, and look at it through all those different lenses, which give you the big picture?
Awesome. Well, Devin, thank you so much for your time today. Really excited about this and really appreciate all you're doing.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.